Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
How are you? Can you see me?
Hello?
Can you hear
Can
me?
you hear me? I can now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm busy sitting outside. I'm in London. I'm trying to figure out where my new office is. I'm a little bit lost. So I've just picked a quiet spot to sit while we do our call. And hopefully we'll find where I need to go.
A new corporate office or a new WeWork kind of situation?
Yeah, it's a WeWork office. That's what we're moving to. So I don't think we need a corporate office for the amount of people that actually work in an office. We'll see what happens. Maybe that'll change in the future.
So what has inspired you to go to a WeWork today instead of working from home?
I've got a couple of meetings, face-to-face meetings. So people have traveled in from the States as well. So it's good to do FaceTime when we can. So that's what we are doing. Bit of an adventure.
Yeah, well, that's exciting, except for the getting lost part.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out now is where to go next. And there's so many WeWorks. It could be any one of 25. So I'm staying put till I hear from someone.
Yeah, I'm sure London has a lot. It's like a, Starbucks on every corner kind of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask how you were generally. What's new?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. We had a week away in Greece, which was great. Actually, I wanted to talk about QR code fatigue, because we stayed in this lovely hotel with 4 restaurants. But every restaurant you went to, you had to view the menu using the QR code. You had to scan it, and it became very frustrating because the menu's quite intricate, and you've got to zoom in, and every time you go there, you've got to scan the code again. You've got to zoom in. You've got to look for the page with everything, and it actually became quite frustrating. And also because you're on holiday, you don't I didn't want to take my phone with me out of the room. I wanted to just leave it on charge or in the safe, and that was the end of it. But now, because you've got your phone with you, so you can view the menus, you don't really disconnect. So it was interesting how something that's actually quite a good thing became quite frustrating after a few days for various reasons.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. So the QR codes, they take you to PDF menus instead of an online ordering system that was more mobile optimized?
No. Yeah, it wasn't PDF. It was like a magazine experience. So you would be swiping and turning the page to view the menu. And that also gets a bit irritating because every time you swipe, it takes a second for it to swipe. It also plays the sound. And if you listen to a podcast like I was doing, every time you swipe the page, it would interrupt your episode to give you the sound of swiping a page. I know why they did it. It's to make it seem more sophisticated than just reviewing a PDF. But a PDF actually would have been nicer. And that's what we ended up getting in the end, is that they WhatsApped us the menus, and then you could basically review the menus in your WhatsApp as PDFs. And that became a lot quicker, because then you can almost plan your meal before you got there. And that was the other thing that I thought was really clever on their part, is that you could interact. From the minute you got there, you got a WhatsApp number with the guest relations. And you could, basically send them a message while you're walking to them. For example, we would go out and I would just WhatsApp and say, okay, we're out the room. Can you send housekeeping to refresh the room, please? Or we were short on water, or whatever it was. You just WhatsApp them instead of having to sit there, phone reception, wait for someone to answer, wait for them to direct you to someone else. And it was very efficient. In fact, sometimes it was so efficient, I asked him to fix something in the room, and I hadn't even warned the babysitter that they were coming, and they'd already come to fix everything and left because they had someone right there. So it was actually, in that sense, really cool.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think like the whole the use of WhatsApp is just not, the same in the States or to that level anyway. So it's interesting to hear it being used in all of these commercial fashions, I suppose. But it makes total sense to, swap to something that you're kind of cutting the bottleneck of, one person at reception fielding calls and then redirecting to other departments instead of just, something that multiple people can monitor more easily, multiple groups.
Yeah. It's actually interesting because they had an app as well, and the app wasn't very good. You couldn't view the menus, you couldn't book anything, and one of the things that we liked about this hotel was an all-inclusive hotel, and you could book your restaurants and all this sort of stuff before you got there. The thing that they didn't do very well is because you booked something, it wasn't very easy to see where you booked it. So the app didn't tell you what restaurants you booked. We have young kids, so we wanted babysitters and stuff like that. So it wasn't easy to say, if I booked dinner tonight at 8:30, that I need a babysitter, like tick the box, give me the babysitter at the same time. And then also if you've booked like spa treatments or like we went on a boat the one day, we booked that, that also could have been in your itinerary. So, from a digital experience point of view, there were a few things that we discussed that they could improve on. And that would even make it more efficient to be able to plan up the stuff, because every restaurant, you can't just go in there for dinner except for the buffet. You have to book, and you end up in these sort of situations where, like, we booked a dinner a couple nights on our own, and the kids were babysitters. We booked for 8:30, and then only to find out that our reservation was like 6 p.m. and they hadn't told us that they'd moved the reservation, or they'd moved the reservation and didn't tell us that they'd actually moved it to what we wanted. So we didn't tell the babysitter that we were going to be going to dinner earlier. So you end up with those sort of, these are minor things. These are not critical, not critical, but it's just, you go in there to relax and you're dealing with admin that it could be a little bit simpler. And they're very good. They took it all as good feedback. But if I compare it to other hotels we've stayed in, it's leaps and bounds ahead, because they are using the tools available to make it a good experience, generally speaking. If these are things you're complaining about, then it's a pretty well-run hotel.
It does sound like they're taking advantage of technology in all these forms to, try to improve that guest experience, although always things to smooth over, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that I would definitely say was great. My daughter, the one night I fed her too much creme brulee, so at about 3:00 in the morning, she could, her little tummy couldn't process it, so it came back up, which meant we had to, call housekeeping or whatever at 3:00 in the morning to change the room and all that kind of stuff. But what was impressive is the next day at lunch, we were sort of sitting there, my wife and I, the kids had gone to kids club, and we were having a chat, and the duty manager came and started talking to us. Now, when someone talks to you and you can kind of get the sense that they want to ask you something, but they're giving you the general chat beforehand, how are you finding things, that kind of stuff. And you could see they want to ask the question, and then she was like, is your daughter sick? Do you need the doctor to come in? All that kind of stuff. And they're like, no, that's fine. You just had too much creme brulee. But they were so attentive. And she knew where to find us, because when we sat down for lunch, they take your room number, and so they know where you're sitting. Even though it's all inclusive, I think they're still tracking, what you're eating, what you're drinking, all that kind of stuff. And we were just so impressed that they took that extra little bit of effort, which, and it wasn't just that, it was a few people. And I just think about it from a like a brand point of view, like every hotel in the chain that is supposed to be like this, it builds up loyalty. And they're using data in a very clever way. And it's not intrusive because you don't feel like you're giving your life away. I mean, everything's tracked back to your room number, which you would have given anyway if you were signing a bill. But if, I know for a fact if we go to another one, and I've heard this from other people, when we get there, they'll take the preferences into account. Like we don't drink caffeine, or we don't have any caffeine. So all our bars and stuff, like when we got there, they automatically asked us, do you still want a decaf, whatever it is, decaf espresso or whatever, without us having to remind them, hey, listen, we want a decaf latte or decaf espresso. So, I thought it was a very clever, in that sense, use of data to give a better experience.
That is, yeah. Seems very modern way to run an operation like that.
Yeah, so it was interesting. Going back to our sort of nomad conversations, we met a lot of people while we were talking around a lot of various Americans and British, obviously, and all the rest of it. And it was interesting to find so many people had come out to Greece for like a month, and they were working 2-3 weeks of that month, and then traveling, then doing a holiday, or doing 2 weeks in 2 weeks because they could work remotely, and they were basically leveraging kids clubs in the hotels as childcare, so that they could have a holiday with their kids, but then also they're working where they were, and then also having the different seniors. So very much like what I did in South Africa, they were doing it in Europe, and it was crazy. It was not like 1 or 2 people; it was maybe 10 or 15 people, the families doing it. I thought it was quite impressive.
Yeah, it seems like Greece is one of those destinations, obviously very popular for travel, but even for the digital nomad crowd. And as you say, your resort was, well stocked when it came to technology. So I'm sure they had, adequate Wi-Fi and charging and, all the things you need to do that successfully.
Yeah. Look, the Wi-Fi was also good. This was a pretty big resort, not the biggest. But, you could be on the beach and still have good connectivity all the way out to your apartment or whatever you're in. I wouldn't say that I would work. I'd want to work there all day long, but there were people sitting in the pool areas with their laptops. Quite a few lawyers, funny enough. While the kids were playing in the kids' pool, they'd be on conference calls in their bikinis and swim shorts. Some with cameras on, some with cameras off. Doing
cameras on is both. Cameras on in your swimsuit is both.
Yeah. No, I said to the one lady, I said, are you get your camera on? And she said, yeah. I said, but you're in your bikini. She said, and what are your work colleagues thinking? I said, I warned them, if they want me to work while I'm on holiday, then you're going to see me in my glory. It's like, okay, that's a new extreme for me.
Okay, well, it sounds like maybe she doesn't want to work on vacation. She was forced into it. I did want to ask you, it sounds like you've done this, a few times, right? Treating or working on part of the overall vacation. Do you find it easy to kind of switch off at the end of the day and get into vacation mode, or is that kind of separation challenging, I guess, and then you don't really get into vacation mode until the rest of the trip?
It is very challenging, and I actually had to delete themes and output from my phone. And it's one of those tricky things, and I've actually talked to a few people, especially senior people, where like they have to approve financial things and all that kind of stuff, and they don't want to delegate those sorts of responsibilities, and also the amount of email that they get or communication that they feel they have to be aware of or involved in. So they have like hours where they will go get up at 4 a.m. and do like an hour of email just to keep on top of it. what I did is I the first couple of days. So we flew on a Monday, and we came back on a Monday. So what I did on the Friday before we flew at like 4 o'clock is I deleted the apps off my phone till we got to Greece, which was on the Monday afternoon. And then only on like the Wednesday after I felt like I'd actually disconnected, or I wasn't in that sort of anxious state of checking what was going on, and also trying to give my team the time and space to do what they're supposed to do and give them the trust. Then I reinstalled the apps, and then I would scan through what had gone on in those days, and just if there was something that I needed to do, but it wasn't going to undermine any of my team, then I would get involved. So, for example, stupid things like I had to extend some meeting series that I had set up that had run out, and because they'd run out, no one thought to reset them up, and that's just sometimes human behavior. Some people don't get past that; they always think that the other person who set them up must continue them. So I just extended those series, and then I had to approve some timesheets, which I'd forgotten to approve on the Friday because the email came in after I signed off with the obviously American time zone. So those little admin things I did, because obviously a timesheet relates to someone getting paid. Always good to get those things done, and then just approving leave and all that kind of stuff. So nothing that would stress me out. And if there was something that was stressful, or could, it's almost like a hook on a fishing line. If you let yourself get hooked, when you get drawn into everything, those things are just scheduled to the next week, to like a Tuesday. And if you do the scheduling in Outlook, you don't see the email anymore. And the more those that sort of reappeared, I just kept rescheduling them to when I got back. And often what happens is they get sorted out one way or another. Someone will step in, or it'll wait till you get back. It's so always as urgent as everyone thinks it is. So generally, I was actually quite good. In fact, it was the first time in a long time I've actually disconnected. Because most of the holidays I work, I end up doing a couple of hours a day. Usually when the kids are sleeping or doing something in the kids' club, I'd laptop out and be working. But this time I actually disconnected.
That's nice. That's kind of my worry about doing a work vacation, even partially, is it going to, I guess, negate that mental break, just make it harder to, suppose, enjoy the evenings even outside of work. But
well, I think it's very important to set those expectations. So like this trip, I told everyone I'm not going to be online, I'm not going to be available, to the point of almost saying, unless absolutely someone's going to die if I'm not available, don't call me. You're big enough, old enough to make decisions. Make the decision that you think you need to make, and as long as we can back under that decision, trust me, make the right call. So, and that's why I say I let the guys get on with it as much as possible. There have been holidays where I've said I'll be available, but then you've got to set the expectation with who you're going with. Like in my case, it's the family, and say, look, I'm going to be working, so I'm going to be working. I'm going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to work till 7, and then I'm have 2 calls a day or whatever it is. But you're not going to be on the phone all day long, necessarily. When we did Fancourt December, the Christmas period, I said I'd be working because I knew there wouldn't be a lot of people around, and then I could work pretty much any hours I liked because I wasn't necessarily on calls all the time. And I had 2-3 hours a week of phone calls, but I did a lot of the sort of planning and strategy stuff instead. So that that sense it makes sense. And then the kids get their time as well. Like we would go to the beach in the morning. Because of the time zone as well, I'd have sort of 7 in the morning till 12 to spend with the kids, doing the beach and whatever activities. And then from like 12 until 6, I'd be in the room working, and they would go to kids club or go with my wife to do stuff, their grandparents, whatever. And then you've worked a full day anyway, because I would have got up at 4 in the morning, to do 2 hours then. And then by the time it comes to sort of 6, you're winding down, you go for dinner, spend more time with the family, then that's fine. Then everyone knows what's going on and it's clear. And there would be, obviously in that period of time, there would have been days with the afternoon I would have done something with the kids and off the morning, but I would have still done the work in the morning. And it's just about being transparent. You book it out in the diary, and some days you work the weekend, some hours in the weekend just to make up for the time. But that's just integrated working.
Yeah. No, it sounds like, setting expectations, creating a schedule. It sounds like you've gotten it figured out a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's not an absolute thing. I think it's trial and error. See what works, doesn't work.
Yeah, I recall when we were doing some of our episodes on digital nomads, there were one of the drawbacks to it where, some people felt that they didn't really get to experience the travel part or being in a place because they spent all their time working anyway. So it's like they were traveling all around but not really enjoying where they were. So I think it can be challenging depending on your schedule and your ability to set boundaries and expectations to do that integrated work travel.
Yeah, well, it's got to be results driven, not hours driven per se. That's why I say, like, if I had to work a weekend for something, it's because I committed to doing something and I didn't get the work done in the time that I thought I had, so I had to find the time somewhere else. Which when you have young kids, typically they're not out every weekend, into the late night, going for late dinner and stuff, so you can use the evening to catch up if you have to.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up on our allotted time here, and I assume you still need to navigate your way to your WeWork.
I've actually found it. While I didn't realize it was actually next door to where I was. So I found it.
Perfect.
I am going to be going into another meeting now. So yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, enjoy.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye, Ryan.
Thanks, Eva. Cheers, Dave. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.